Thank you all for taking time out of your Sunday. I know that many of you all are already aware of Deb Willis's incredible legacy and career, but I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity for us to spend time on this Sunday thinking about her current projects, her future projects, and how she's been so extraordinarily busy during this crazy time. As many of you all know, Deb Willis is a photographer, a curator, a professor, a leading historian of African American photography, an exceptional curator. I know that many of you all have had an opportunity to see her exhibitions and spend time with her, read her books, and just follow and appreciate so many things that she has done. But just a brief note, you all know that she is the chair of the Department of Photography and Imaging at the Tisch School at NYU. And she is an incredible cultural historian. She's also the inaugural Stuart B. Cooper Chair in Photography at the Maryland Institute and College of Art in Baltimore. You all know that her work examines the multifaceted histories of African American art and African American people and visual culture and gender studies. So many things to get excited about. Every time I talk with her or see her, I get so thrilled and overwhelmed in many instances by the exciting work that she has done. You all probably also know that she is a MacArthur Fellow. She is also a Richard Cohen Fellow at the Hutchins Center at Harvard. She's a Guggenheim Fellow. Most recently, she was named as one of the deciders by Art News, and so many exciting things that just make her career so exciting to follow. So I thought what we would do is certainly spend time talking about her evolution, but also her current project. So Deb, thank you for spending time with us, but I'd really be remiss if I did not thank Fahamu Paku for this incredible opportunity. ADAMA is doing amazing things. And if you all don't know, the African Diaspora Art Museum of Atlanta is an incredible space for dialogue and for conversation. So again, thank you all for spending time with us this Sunday. So Deb, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Andrea. It's really great to be here and have ADAMA actually create this space for all of us. And so it's really exciting to be a part of this.
Yes. So I sent my PowerPoint to Fahamu, and he's going to be operating it sort of behind the scenes in just a few moments. I'm assuming, I had a tech challenge, but hopefully he's behind the scenes getting it moving. But I just want to start by saying, in addition to thank you, asking how are you? How are you?
Right. I'm good. I am, it's been difficult based on the pandemic and all of the experiences that many of us are having, but I'm good. My 98-year-old mother is good, and my 15-month-old grandchild is good. So it really warms my heart that I have those two ladies in my life. So I'm good.
Wow, an exceptional time. I'm looking at this incredible screen behind you, and I know that we have so many things to talk about that are really going to excite the people that have joined us today. And I'll just start by saying, there are many people who aren't with us today that we miss and that we lost unexpectedly. And I would just love to start by bringing several of them into the room. Certainly Pella McDaniel, certainly David Driscoll. I would love to also lift up Emma Amos's name. I invite people that are joining us today, if there are people that they want to bring into the room, to also do so via the chat feature. I know that Fahamu and I have had many conversations about love and loss during this time. And if there are people that you want to bring into this room, I certainly encourage you all to do
Yeah, I
so.
really think it's also important in terms of just the idea of, tomorrow is Memorial Day. And as we think about men in uniform, I always, acknowledge my father, Thomas Willis, who will have his photograph pretty soon coming up. But and also to think about the project that I'm working on now is on the Black Civil War soldier, and to think and consider all of the soldiers based on the Black Civil War heroes that we acknowledged and don't know, but that's something that's really important.
Absolutely. I'm seeing an amazing number of names that are entering the space with us.
Yes, I see.
From Louis Del Sart to Maurice Berger to Dorothy Royal to Timothy Jones. Just really want to thank you all for bringing these individuals into the room with us. I see from Fahamu that there's still a challenge regarding the weed transfer. So in the interest of time, I would just love if you would start off by talking about your current research. So excited by this book that is long awaited and has been quite the extraordinary labor of love. And so if you would begin with that, that would be great.
Yeah, this is a book that the title of the book is called The Black Civil War Soldier, Conflict and Citizenship. And I've been working on it for about a little more than 4 years. And it's an NYU Press book. I'm looking and thinking about and researching the letters of the Civil War soldiers and the photographs. Many of us do not know that history and the act of being, the act of photographing and what it represented during that time period, specifically for men who wanted to be free, but the photograph allowed them to embody freedom through their posing in the studios or in the campsites and things like that. So I found Barbara Calhammond and I worked together on Envisioning Emancipation, and we had a chance to see a number of images that highlighted freedom and emancipation. And having that opportunity, it was important for me to see how to tell that story, especially through letters. Seeing mothers write letters to Abraham Lincoln and soldiers saying that we need to have full pay, and that kind of experience. So I wanted to share that story. And, storytelling is part of what we do. So I wanted to, enhance that.
Absolutely.
So I see we're on now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fahamu, for working with us through my tech challenge. I'm sure it was me. And your dad. Oh, I just was so excited to see this photograph on the eve of Memorial Day. Yeah. So these letters, can you tell us a bit more about how you went about this project and how it came to fruition?
Pamela Newkirk also is, a dear friend and colleague, and she wrote a wonderful book following the letters of African Americans from the early part of this country to now. And to have that experience, I was fascinated also with how do we compare letters, love letters of Black people in the 19th century. And the letters had hope. And exploring that experience, I wanted to preserve that memory. How do we tell the story through love letters, through letters of hope, letters that challenged people in that way, but using also diaries, like Charlotte Fortin. She was a teacher down in the Sea Islands from Philadelphia. She took a boat down and spent time there teaching the newly emancipated children. And so it was really exciting to see her writing about the experience that she had, wearing pants, riding horses, meeting Colonel Shaw, listening to music and going to praise services. But reading Charlotte Fortin was just I felt really connected to a woman traveling during that time period.
So, you know, I would love it if, you know, Fahamu, if you would move forward to the slide, the next slide. That's great. He's going to refer to the original. So the next slide is
The one above.
the one below it, the very, the
We
next.
want to do the image right here. Can we stop at David Driscoll just for a second as we acknowledge him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just wanted to share this moment. We were in South Africa, as you know, and we were at the American Embassy where Patrick Gaspard was the ambassador, to see Kelly Jones and Lisa Esser and David, who embodied so much of what it meant for us to study art history. But he also talked about his experience the first time going to South Africa. And I wanted, as you know, as we are, learned a lot from David, and I just wanted to honor him in this image.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for bringing him into this room. Absolutely. We are going to spend a lot of time sort of revisiting his name and his legacy for many, many decades to come. So I love the fact that you were generous and shared so many photographs from Philadelphia. And again, as we think about bringing people into this room, just absolutely excited to see baby pictures and family pictures. Any comments that you want to make about these cuties here?
You know, my father also was an amateur photographer, loved taking images, and he was a policeman. He had a grocery store, he had a tailor shop, and he also was a paper hanger. So he had a calendar, and he used to have calendar images, and the one with the image with me with holding my black doll and my sister holding her doll. We thought he was photographing us. He was really photographing the wallpaper. He used to advertise his craft, and this is Christmas, and so this was so exciting to see how you know, he often photographed and in just those of us with our dolls, and I love the other one with my mom looking adoringly at me and our babysitter in the kitchen. You know, just that moment, just these moments of love and sharing, and that's where I think that history of my interests and how do we visualize memorabilia such as photographs and objects such as photographs to enhance a story about Black love and Black joy.
Mm-hmm. Joy. So the next slide, Hanu.
And as you know, my mom had a beauty shop. I grew up in the beauty shop, and about 15 or 20 years ago, I decided Mom's friends were in their 80s, late 70s and 90s, and they were still doing hair and working and caring for people. And I wanted to do a project on all of the women my mother went to beauty school with, Apex Beauty School, and to document them in their shops. And so that was part of that aspect of it. Mm-hmm. So we go to the next slide. And just a project that is a new project that I'm involved with Paul Farber. It's called Staying Power, and just about North Philly, or an area in North Philly called the Village. And so I've been going to Philadelphia often, as you know, but this is a new project that we are going to explore in North Philadelphia called Staying Power. And he invited a number of artists to think about communities and what's the staying power in communities. And I thought the corner store, as well as the church and the beauty shop, you know, that's part of that staying power.
Okay. The next slide, please. Another one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I was so intrigued by these two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, third Sunday in the North Penn Baptist Church. This is Reverend Marshall, a young woman being prepared to be baptized.
Mm-hmm.
I was just fascinated. This is the church I was baptized in.
Mm-hmm.
And having this opportunity, I photographed this image in February when we were down to celebrate my mom's 98th birthday.
Is there a project planned currently for this series? Are you working on it with a particular?
I want to include this in the Staying Power project that's in Philly, and just the idea of staying power broadens that history of what it means to empower yourself, also to empower the story of how spirituality is central in the community.
And then the next slide, if you would, Fahama, takes us back a little ways.
Yeah.
Would you share a bit about this for people who have not had the opportunity to experience this in person?
Yeah, this is really exciting. Carrie Mae Weems, who we all love and just respect, and her vision. She wanted to celebrate Zora Neale Hurston and the experience of Eatonville, her town that she grew up in. And we all had different projects that we wanted to explore. And of course, mine is always the beauty shop and the church. So I photographed in a shop in Eatonville while Carrie was working with the beauty salon owner to create a hairstyle that was similar to the one of Zora Neale as she was about to go on her research trips. So I was there photographing, and I also photographed in the churches there where her father used to preach, and the importance of Eatontown as a one of the first towns that was organized in this country.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop your complete bio in the chat room. And the reason I say that right now is that I think it's so fascinating. Not only are we talking about you moving back and forth between your photography career, but also your career as a curator, as a historian. And I want to spend some time talking about how you do that so incredibly seamlessly. And I know they're related, they're all very related, but if you would share a bit about how those practices all come together, I would appreciate it very much.
I have been, as you know, when I was an undergrad at Philadelphia College of Art, I was told that there, very few African-American photographers were in my history books, and I was encouraged by my teacher to why not go out and research and write a paper about Black photographers. And having that opportunity to use that as a way to identify and enhance the history of the photography that I experienced, I wanted to show that Black people were behind the camera, not always in front of the camera, but behind the camera as early as the 1840s. And they told different stories during the time of some people were freed, some people were bonded, but the experience for me always connected to the idea that we existed, and there was a sense of resilience as a way of looking at these images. But that started that history. And then I was also told by a male professor that I was taking up a good man's space. Ooh. And there were 18 men in the classroom and only 3 women. And he said that all you're gonna do is get pregnant, have a baby, and a good man could have been in that space. So it really kind of silenced me for a moment and shocked me that I was, being targeted in that way, but then, and yeah, so what, Yeah, I am a woman, I will have a baby, yes, I hope to have a baby. But that moment really kind of froze me into a moment of denying my dream to become a photographer, but also a dream to become a mother, or any of the parts that women try to experience in telling their stories. So moving forward, I decided I was going to continue to make stories about women, about life, about family, but also to connect the many stories. And then in graduate school, I was at Pratt. And then later, when I was doing my research, I was at Schomburg, and at the Schomburg Center, looking at photographs, trying to find the photographers, trying to identify them. And they were not cataloged in the way that I wanted them to be as a user of images. And luckily, I was hired in 1980 by Ruth Ann Stewart and by Jean Blackwell Hudson, and they were looking for a photo specialist. And that was my education. I became, as people used to tease me, as Debbie Schomburg. Because I was the person who was collecting Black photographers, making sure that they were in the collections, looking for an exhibition space for them, and we created a space for many of the photographers who were working then, like Monita Sleed and Morgan and Marvin Smith and Gordon Parks and Bobby Senstack. So when I think about all of the Black photographers I met during that time period, it was really significant, and it was really an education for me. So that's the part of it that was really essential.
Well, we're all the beneficiaries of the extraordinary work that you've done across these various realms, and between reading the books and doing the exhibitions and having the conversations and attending the lectures, again, we're all richer for it. And so, Fahamu, if you would go ahead and resume the one that I sent via WeTransfer, that would be great. Who knew that we'd be having this extraordinary technology? It's extraordinary, to say the least. Who knew we'd be doing this? This is tremendous on a lot of different levels. So if you would go forward, I would just love to share the book cover that you mentioned for the forthcoming book.
Okay.
You know, again, when I think about the images that are behind you in terms of your screen, as well as seeing this extraordinary cover, it's something that we all look forward to in 2021. This particular daguerreotype is amazing in the way that they have framed it and prepared it for this cover is something that we're all looking forward to. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we go to the next? So many things.
Just exciting to see this. It's in the collection of the Smithsonian's National African American History and Culture Museum. So that's really exciting to see how that museum is, you know, collecting and expanding our histories in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Really, really stunning. So the next slide, please, Fahamu. So we all know that you've been very, very busy doing a lot of things, but I would love it if you would say a bit about this incredible project called Lockdown.
Yeah, this is a photographer. Laria is a photographer in Italy. I was invited to join a group of 99 others that she had been photographing people, and the project is called Lockdown. She was interested in what people in the arts and medicine and other fields, what they were doing in the house. One of my colleagues here at NYU shared my information with her, and she invited me to sit for her. It was a fascinating experience because the experience of sitting in your apartment and having someone photograph you through your computer was amazing. There's the software or platform is called Whereby, which I was unfamiliar with. She's in Rome, and I'm here in New York. He told me where to place my computer, and then she guided me through different parts of my sofa to where to sit until she found an image that suited her vision to make the portrait. So what happened with that experience, she also asked everyone to write about it. And so I wrote about how difficult it was for me to sit in my house for, then was 49 days without leaving my apartment. but to think about the people, like, you know, I lost 5 friends during that time period. And so every day I would just sit, photograph outside at 7 o'clock when people would sound the alert to praise the essential workers. But to think about that experience, I also thinking about migrations and about women and migrations and how women who are migrating during this time period, what's happening to them and their lives and their experience. And working with a colleague of mine, Ellen Toscano, and Cheryl Finley, we're creating a workshop, conversations, 4 conversations in June to talk about women and migrations on the NYU website, and on a webinar or Zoom webinar. But we want to think about the storytelling, the difficult experience that women are having, and then how do we make this experience joyful for our children in the home, who are mothers who are teaching their children, who are having the experience of cooking nonstop, you know, caring for older people, and how do we take care of this? And so I've been thinking a lot about that during this 49 days. But then, so here I am in my living room with, you know, books and books and books and that experience.
Well, I just shared the link to this series in the chat room, so people can go and see it in its extensive serial format, as well as read what you also wrote about it during that time. Can I have the next slide, please? So
yes, and then I also, you know, I wanted to talk about my curatorial practice in this conversation. And I curated a show at Indiana University called Framing Beauty, Intimate Moments. And of course, you know, how not to have a show about beauty and not include Carrie Mae Weems. And one of the central images that she has is the kitchen table series and what it means to think and at the kitchen table. How do you educate at the kitchen table? Just as we talked about the lockdown, you know, I'm at my table now, you know, having this conversation. But also we teach, we share stories, we cry, we eat, we do all of that at the kitchen table.
Next slide, please. There's some installation photographs as well.
In this catalog.
How can you resist this?
Yeah.
How can you resist this particular image? But I am so excited about the installation photographs. This for me has been the hardest, not actually spending time with works of art.
Yeah, Kahinde.
Beautiful installation. I thought what we would do during this conversation is also spend some time sort of looking back and forth at some of the projects that you've curated. So more of those.
Yeah, this is, you know, Omar Victor Diop, and a central figure for me is thinking about when we invited him to speak and share his work in Florence, and to have this in the exhibition when we're thinking about, he's looking at the history of Black men in the diaspora from the 17th century to now, and also looking at fashion, central to Black figures throughout that history. How do we dress for the camera?
I just got a wonderful reminder to send it to all of the panelists, some of the references that we're making. So I just sent that as well. So thank you for that reminder. That was from Sue. So the next slide, please.
Yes, so this is a project that I'm working on in Philadelphia with Mural Arts Project. It's a project with Michelle Jones, who is a PhD in American Studies here at NYU. And she wanted to work with looking at the aspect of what it means to, when you're released from prison and the stigma that happens. in terms of dress and how we're reread, how the body is reread through identities, through this experience of leaving and contributing to the community. We photographed it last summer, 6 or 8 people in Philadelphia. And it was a fascinating experience for me because they brought the clothes that they wanted to be seen in and experience, and then tell the story about their experiences. And it's part of the Mural Arts Project. And this is Abdullah Latif, and he was fantastic. I've made a number of images of him and listening to him.
Mm-hmm. There are some others. Fahima, would you please advance to the next slide? Oh,
yes. Yeah. Naima, she was fantastic. Just the joy of photographing her, and in terms of the clothes you wear in prison, and then how, viewing the sense of beauty and seeing her experience, but also her tats. Her tats were fantastic, and seeing that, and she was great storyteller, loving it, and loving herself.
Yeah,
it was great.
So I love to see the joy that you have on your face just from talking about it. Yeah. Tell me a bit about what you've learned about yourself through this project.
What I learned, I just in terms of working through this project, is I've always been focusing on the idea of the history of beauty in a different way of how do we talk about beauty and how do we celebrate it, because prior to Instagram, beauty was never really talked about outside of Ebony magazine, sepia, our Black magazines. And so having this sense of beauty explored through this experience is just telling this story through people who it felt empowered. Mm-hmm. Some people have difficult lives. I actually, one of the people I photographed was a man who was blind, and I've never photographed a person who was unsighted, and having that didn't have sight, but the experience of guiding him through the photograph. This is Reverend Michelle Ann Simmons. She, another joyful person, working with the community, working with women, and praising every day. And that was the experience that I had with photographing her. Mm-hmm. And faith. She has faith on Tet on her hand. Mm-hmm. And she's also a spiritual person working closely with women in different parts of the communities in Philadelphia. So this kind of animated, this is William Goldsby here, with his cane and his style. And we had fun photographing. I was nervous, sure. Because I didn't know how to guide. I didn't know how to direct, but he helped relax me. And that kind of conversations about, he just kind of wrongfully imprisoned most of his life. That experience, and as a young man, going into the community, it was hard, and then to think about the sense of empowerment that they gave themselves and how they expressed themselves, and continue to believe, and like when we think about having hope as an anchor, it really opens up another conversation for many people. Mm-hmm. And again, another person who was a great storyteller, John Thompson, who just moved forward with, embraced the project with Michelle, and introduced to other people within these communities. So it's really great to work with this group. And John D. Harrell, who was well known in Philadelphia. So with this, when working with the Mural Arts Project, with Jane, and just the number of people there, I'm just thinking of all of the names of people working with, and the Jesse Grimes, and so anyways, it was like that experience of working with this. Yeah.
So one of the things that has been just a pleasure of, reviewing and discussing your extensive career over the last, several weeks since we've been having this discussion, is the fact that there's so much to say and not enough not enough time. An hour is simply not enough. I want to encourage people, if they've got specific questions, to certainly add them to the chat room, because I had honestly a very, very difficult time narrowing down what we could get to. So I decided that we would focus primarily on current and future projects, but certainly if there are questions related to reflections in Black or posing beauty, et cetera, that people have, or picturing us, or any other of the books that you've written, certainly I encourage you all to include them in the chat room. We'll get as many questions as we can answered. So if we could have the next slide, that would be great. So I wanted to take some time to talk about the incredible series of Black Portraitures. Many people that are on the call or on the Zoom, in our Zoom room will have had the opportunity to participate in one of the Black Portraitures. I was looking through my camera roll, which I do a lot actually, and I found this photograph of us after the second night in Florence, and we had an exciting day of panels. People had just learned how to use their iPads to take photographs, and we had just had a really, really full day. And in the next slide, there's also,
wow.
We were in one of the squares one night, and we were just having this conversation. But I would love it if you would park for a moment and talk about Black Portraitures and what it is, where it's going, updates, and all of those amazing things, because it's truly a transformative forum. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was really an important moment for us when we decided to do Black Portraitures, working with Mancha Diawara and with Awam Ampha in Paris, having that opportunity to create a space for scholars and artists to talk about Black art, Black history, and that experience. With that, knowing that experience, we knew our own experience. We wanted to express and invite others. Mm-hmm. And having that opportunity, we had 500 people in Paris in 2013. We next moved to Florence within that experience of sharing that, and having Florence as our second site. We can you show some of those other images that you have there? Did you have other images there of Florence?
I just included two in the interest of time, but there's so many on my camera roll.
Okay, great. So
many.
Having that experience, we had an opportunity to invite young scholars, seasoned scholars, people who are doing new projects, and that was central for us to create a new dialogue about the imagination and how do we rethink about history, how do we project ourselves in the past and the future. And so that range, we considered works by a number of people, and we couldn't say no. Sometimes panels had 5 people on them, 6 people, but they were so wonderful. And it was rare to have the opportunity to include the voices that we included and to have difficult conversations about art history, but also to really embrace the history, the future of art history. And as we kind of think about it now with the pandemic, we had it here in New York recently, and next it will move in 21 and 22 to to Toronto, and then to Newark in 22. So we are about preserving the histories of how do we create the stories about African American and African diasporic art. We wanted to think about performance and the visual arts. We also wanted to include the creativity that happens even in history storytelling. So that's a part about it.
Well, one of the comments is, I really hope it can be done again. I mean, we know that obviously the pandemic has, grounded a lot of the plans that we have. So we all look forward to both Toronto as well as being in New Jersey, because it's critical. It's really become a transformative and critical space for exchange. We have a question from Monica, who has asked, how does an idea come to you, and how do you receive it, and what do you do? She says, I know it's a really big topic, but if you can comment on how these ideas come to you.
I know, that's it. My husband says, would you go to sleep? Not come up with another idea. And it's like Gordon Parks says, life is a banquet. You need to take a part of all at the table, taste it all at the table. And I follow Gordon Parks's and also David Driscoll as my mentors. They looked at life as a banquet, and they wanted to taste all of it, the bitter, the sweet. How do we explore it? So every day I'm thinking like, okay, I'm going to sleep. I'm not going to have another idea. I'm not going to work on another. I'm not going to do it. And,
yeah, right.
There's something that just tips it. And one of the exciting parts for me is working with my students. They encourage me. I learn from them. They have ideas that they want to explore. And Dr. Deb, what do you think about this? And then yeah, let's work on that. Let's push them forward. So that's the exciting parts for me that I enjoy. And I have no idea how I don't sleep. I have a good 4 hours sleep, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you, at Spelman, we were the incredible beneficiaries, and we had the opportunity of presenting Posing Beauty. Fahama, if you wouldn't mind adding or going back to the slide presentation. I cannot believe this was 2012, Deb.
Wow.
I know, but what's even a bigger wow is when we let people know that this is an exhibition that has been traveling since 2009. So when we talk about impact, this is one of those projects that has an enduring, incredible legacy. And every place, every venue that presents it transforms it into something that is really specific to their viewers and their stakeholders. And so what I love about this particular photograph is on so many occasions, it was bursting at the seams. You simply could not get in the door. And we had so many classes, so many people from the general public came. It was one of those exhibitions. But I'd love it if you, in hindsight, could say a bit about the enduring legacy and qualities of this particular exhibition, because it was a game changer.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I didn't get any funding for this project, for any major grants or any, the idea of doing the book started with my research with working with the Reflections in Black project, and I started saving images and started thinking about images and meeting people as I traveled around. But I got a Guggenheim on this proposal, and with the Guggenheim, receiving the Guggenheim, I had an opportunity to begin to research and write and look for works. And some people said, "Oh, what are you doing studying beauty? That's so frivolous." And I said, no, I had to really push forward to remind people that Black people have been dehumanized in history with caricatures of self without a voice and without an opportunity to talk back. I wanted to think about the possibilities and create another energy. And I couldn't get anyone to take the initial. So luckily I work at NYU and we have a small gallery. And we have galleries in the halls and as well as in the lobby at NYU. And we had a number of people walk through that gallery. And it was so fascinating to have that experience. But then it traveled to Iowa, it traveled to, as we know, to different places from Atlanta. But at every place, it was in Texas, but people kept building on their communities as a result. I was in Delaware recently, and I'm driving down 95, and I see a billboard with the cover of the image, and of course it's Susan Taylor. And we see this billboard, and it says, posing beauty, and to see that experience for me was important. But also we have to remember the histories of the Black press. And the Black press kept us really encouraged with the idea. When we think about the Victory at Home, the Double V campaign, Victory at Home and Victory Abroad during World War II, that women beauticians created hairstyles which created a double V hairstyle. Fashion designers created skirts with double V on it. So we think about how we move forward through beauty in different ways, but also in the ways of telling stories and encouraging communities.
So there are several comments in the chat room, just really expressing just extraordinary gratitude for you and for your work. There are so many questions that people have about the draw of photography. What was that moment like when you received your calling, and when was it the moment that you knew or felt the draw of photography specifically as a medium?
I was young because my dad had a camera. He had a Rolleiflex. Mm-hmm. He took photographs of us, and then he gave me a Brownie when I was probably 7 or 8. And of course, I photographed my Christmas trees and my dolls, and I set up my little quote studios in my fashion. But my father's cousin had a studio that was 2 blocks away. His name was Alfonso Willis. And Jack Franklin, who was a photojournalist in Philadelphia, worked for the Philadelphia Tribune and for a magazine, a nightly magazine called Scoop. And he learned photography in World War II, and he was always interested in talking to us, kids in the neighborhood. But also we had to go to the library every Saturday to pick a book before we could do anything playful. And so I remember when I discovered The Sweet Fly Paper of Life with Roy DiCarava's photographs and Langston Hughes' words. And that was my first book I took out the library on my own. And I had an opportunity to open up that book and see how Roy DiCarava experienced light. That's the light I grew up with. It was dark, it was sometimes bald, didn't have lampshades on, but there are ways of growing into that. And having that opportunity encouraged me. And when I used to put the photographs in the photographic album, when my father brought the images back from the drugstore or whatever store where they were processed in. And so having that opportunity, I knew I wanted to be a photographer. And of course, trying to, convince, your family you want to be a photographer. What do they think about? My father's cousin who has a studio and the photojournalist. And so my father said, okay, you go to junior college first to make sure you can get a job. And then I eventually went to Philadelphia College of Art with a portfolio of images that after taking some courses with it.
So from a very, very young age, you were ensconced into this particular medium. So thank you for that question. I appreciate that. So there's another question specifically about Lauren Kelly's incredible photograph called Pickin'. And I did not include an image of that. And I'm so glad that somebody brought that up. But the question is, there's a photo in Posing Beauty. It's a self-portrait by Lauren Kelly called Pickin' that I love and use on my mood board for a current large-scale project. How did you choose that image and how did it speak to you?
You know, Lauren Kelly is dear friend, love her work. And when I met Lauren, I you know, also knew her family in terms of as collectors. But she had an image there that I grew up with, seeing people with the pick, with the power of the pick, with the power fist. And she created a crown with that pick. And the idea of picking your hair and the sense of empowerment and how do we become royalty and how do we play with the idea of queen and aspect of that. So she created a crown with that pick. And also creating a Afro, oh great.
Magic.
And also creating the importance of that history of empowerment during the Black arts movement. So she is rethinking and reimagining this history. So this is why I thought it was really important to include this. And you know, it was misread. It was reviewed in a magazine, Publishers Weekly. And it was so important that the people who loved it used this as the cover of Afro Pick of the month for February. And so some middle class Black people were very upset, saying that this was a woman who was ashamed of herself because her head was down. How they misread this image, and we had to fight to help the editor keep this image on the cover and to justify the image. And so Lauren and I wrote to the editors of the publication, but also to show that the reason why her head is down so they could see the crown. You could see the dimensions of the crown. You could see the dimensions of the fist in the sense of empowerment. So we see the movement of it. So it's a fascinating way of people looking at this history through different lenses. And so we have to constantly, why education is important is because we have to constantly really move forward to tell stories and why this is an important moment.
On a related note, one of our friends asked to say a bit about selecting the images and from a curatorial perspective, and what kind of visual through lines and narratives between images are you thinking about as you choose images to pair with others and in conversation? So how do you go about creating those relationships when you're curating exhibitions?
I don't know if I think about that. I'm just always thinking about how do we reimagine the world? And I'm always thinking through like a through line of fashion, of way of dress is central for me. I think of ways of, I really don't know. I mean, there's no set rule. So I'm struggling with that question because I don't have a set rule of, I'm always thinking about the possibilities, what works and what doesn't work. And, you know, as you know, when we're installing a show, we're thinking one way, but when we're also inviting artists to about a theme, asking them to, like, okay, so the most recent show I curated was the theme on migrations and meaning in art. I invited Leslie King Hammond to install create an installation, which is a altarpiece, which was a mantelpiece, and who knew that Leslie's family could tell the story through food, fashion, through crocheting. Like she used her grandmother's crocheted doilies and pieces, the lace pieces, and she hung them in around the center of the on the walls near the piece. But she also had peas and sand and stones and beads. So when we think about migration, we think about stories, but what do we carry with us? And so this is what I wanted to think about with the exhibition. And also Michelle Pearson Clark, her piece is it's called Suck Teeth. So when we think about migration, what do we carry? When we carry sound with us, we carry that experience of sound. I love Michelle's piece because we know what it means to suck teeth in South Africa, in North Philly, in South, in the Caribbean, Nigeria. So what that means, and it has emotion. So with that exhibition, I didn't know what would work and what wouldn't work, or what, especially when I used a photographer who photographed people who didn't migrate and how the town changed. And that was Larry Wilcox Frazier, like people in Iowa, the people who did not leave the town, and that experience. Yeah. So here's Michelle's Pearson Clark Suck Teeth. And people sat and looked and listened and laughed and experienced that piece. It's just a wonderful way of thinking about how we can tell different stories. And I didn't know that when I met Michelle she was at Black Portraitures one time, that she would ever be in a show, whatever. But that's how it works. I meet people leave me information, send me information. And so these opportunities expand based on Black Portraitures or giving lectures at different places.
So lots of different ways. There's no set answer, but the work just really compels you in different ways. And then the relationships begin to build, not just between you and the object, but also with you and the other photographers that create the work. So I'm very sensitive about it being a Sunday, and that we are very, very close to the end of our hour. But there are a couple more, if I could try to sneak them in.
Is there a way that we can save the chats as well, that I could see some of the questions later?
That's true. Okay.
No, I was just curious. Is there a way to?
Oh yes, we can do that. We can do that. We can save those. Okay.
Chats. Great.
So
we have, I guess we have one more. I guess it's till 12:57, right?
Let's see. There are a couple more that are on here. Someone wants advice for an aspiring photographer. There's one about time. There's one about. And
there's nothing called balance. Someone asked me, how do you balance your life? There's no such thing as balancing your life. You make it fit, you make it work. You're tired, you're excited, you just keep working.
No balance.
No balance.
Any advice or encouragement to aspiring emerging photographers?
Do it.
Do it. Do it. I'll never forget our friend Amalia Amaki once said, if you have to warehouse the work, just do it. Just make the work, just do it. I will never ever forget that. Just do it. So many other things. Well, we will save this line of conversation. I know you and I will continue to have our conversation. ADAMA is an amazing, amazing forum for these types of conversations. I'm so grateful that you took time from your busy schedule to spend an hour with us. I know that you are in the midst of many, many things. Thank you for your patience with the tech challenge. And thank you, Fahamu, for bringing it to fruition. Always a pleasure to be in community with you, Deb. And missed you the last time that you came to Spelman. I was traveling, and I'm so sorry that I missed you, but happy to be with you in this remote forum, and so glad that 68 people are now engaged with us. And
it was great being on campus when I was there in March, and that was the last time I traveled. So to have that.
Wow. Wow. So Fahamu, if I could trouble you to bring up the last slide. There's something that I love to see you actually in situ at our space. This was during our Posing Beauty presentation back in 2012. It's this very next one. I love this photograph of you, and nothing like seeing, you in our space talking about this exceptional project, which made an incredible impact on our audiences. So again, thank you for spending time. We're looking forward to the new book in 2021. And in the meantime, be safe and be well. We'll see you soon. All right.
Thank
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you.
you, Andrea. Thank you.